to be with us here tonight as we talk about course selection at Belmont High School for the 2021-2022 school year. So the goal of tonight's presentation is to outline and explain the principles and the processes for course selection this year. And before we do that, I'd just like to say an extra special welcome to our incoming 9th grade students, class of 2025, who are also joining us here tonight. Welcome. We're super excited to have you coming into the high school next year to be part of the Belmont High School community. So we know this has been a tough year, to say the least. And in response to that, with course selection, we've rethought the process around course selection. So for our current 9th and 10th and 11th grade students, this process will be slightly different to last year, and we'll go all through that tonight. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, I'd just like to say how much I'm looking forward to having all of our Belmont High School students back in our school in September, and not just in our school, but in our brand new building with facilities and an atmosphere to inspire students and offer real opportunities to flourish. And more than a new building, I'm really excited about being able to fully bring back the culture of Belmont High School, which is, a culture that's about students having agency and choice and being able to make decisions and having room and having space and support of a really caring and knowledgeable staff who help guide our students through high school and prepare you all for your next steps in life. What's most important to me is that students at Belmont High School feel loved, safe, trusted, supported, appropriately challenged, and valued and heard. And this is the basis for every decision that we make as a school, including the courses we offer, and the course selection process. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Assistant Principal Allie Ruane. She's the assistant principal who oversees the 9th grade.
Great. Thank you, Principal Taylor, and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here this evening. I'm going to double down on Mr. Taylor's special welcome to the class of 2025 and their families. We are so excited to welcome you to Belmont High School next year and really to celebrate all of your accomplishments to date. The transition between 8th and 9th grade is a major one. And I'm really excited about the fact that our leadership team at the high school has been partnering and working closely with the leadership team at the middle school under Ms. Koza. I think that the things that we've put in place for the transition next year are going to have great outcomes for students. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that we're going to need to think carefully about the transition for all grades next year. And parents out there, please know that at the high school, we're already working around those transitions. Teachers, counselors, the leadership team, we are planning for how to support your student in moving to the next grade, given the unusual circumstances of this year. I also just want to highlight again what Mr. Taylor mentioned around our values at Belmont High School. Student agency, a school and family partnership, as well as providing appropriate levels of support, which is different from student to student, grade to grade. I believe that the changes that we've made to the course selection process this year really reflect these values as a school. And at this point, I will turn it over to Assistant Principal Wynn.
Thanks, Ms. Ruane. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here. I just want to note we are in a webinar, so you'll see that there is a Q&A function available to you. What we're going to do over the next 20 minutes or so is an overview of this process, and then we'll go into a few examples at the end, and then we'll have time for question and answer. So we're going to ask if the Q&A feature can stay a little bit quiet while we go through the presentation and give that general overview. And then we'll let you know when it's time for question and answer. We'll turn our attention to the Q&A part of the Zoom and hopefully get lots of questions answered. So I'm really glad that Ms. Rain started there with our values, echoing what Principal Taylor said. We see those values echoed in what we're thinking is kind of 4 parts of this course selection process. We have put together a website. So that is the course selection website or the course template website. And on that website, we're trying to provide lots and lots of information for students and families up front about what requirements are needed, what elective classes are offered, and what do the classes look like. So each course has a template that goes into a little more depth than our program of studies and provides information about what might my day-to-day experience be in this class. So that's part 1. Part 2 is teacher recommendations and conversations. Part 3 is conversations with our guidance counselors. And then part 4, we know that you're going to have conversations with family and friends. And so all of these pieces together really make up what we're seeing as this course selection experience. And so if you go to the next slide, Mr. O'Brien, I'm going to start by talking a little bit more about this website. We're going to show you this website at the end, but generally the overview, just to build on what I shared a few moments ago, this is a little screen capture of it, and I'll show you where it's linked on the Belmont High School website, so we'll show you where that is in just a few minutes. But the goal of this website is to be kind of one-stop shopping for initial information about courses and what courses are open to students in different grades. You'll see a whole bunch of information there about your requirements, electives, and we really see this as kind of the starting point for figuring out what courses you're interested in, what questions you need to ask, what teachers you might go talk to, and follow up as you think about what courses might be right for you next year. So that brings us to teacher recommendations. The kind of next step in thinking about courses is that teachers are going to provide recommendations to students. For our current high school students, or our current 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students, that'll come through Plus Portals, and we will send emails and give lots and lots of information when those come out, and those will be coming out on March 12th. For our current 8th grade students, those are going to come out a little bit later, just after your progress reports, and you will get an email if you are a current 8th grade student with your teacher recommendations. Teacher recommendations are for core courses, and what they are is your teacher thinking about what they've seen of you as a student this year and their knowledge of the courses that are available for you next year, and thinking about what might be a good fit. These teacher recommendations are definitely best done when you follow up with a conversation. So if you get a teacher recommendation and you want to talk more to your teacher about it, please reach out. Teachers are excited to have those conversations and talk about what class could be a good fit, what class could be that right amount of challenging for you, and how to be successful in the next year. So teachers are going to make recommendations for you. Mr. O'Brien, if you go to the next slide, there's a couple of questions you may be wondering for those core classes. As I said, current 8th grades are going to be emails, 9 through 12 is going to be in portals. Have those conversations with your teachers. Use XBlock, use Community Block to have conversations and reach out. Ultimately, the recommendations should inform your decision, but you students and your families are going to choose the classes that you want. So Mr. O'Brien's going to talk about guidance counselor conversations in a moment, and that's where you'll ultimately make your decision about courses. We hope teacher recommendations inform the process and help you feel supported in the process, and then you'll decide with your guidance counselors. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. And again, let me be the last to echo everyone else's welcome. We are really excited for what lies ahead for all of our students as we transition into the new high school building in the fall. And we're excited to take this process and to give students additional agency and support as they plan their path in terms of courses. So the conversations with guidance is one piece of that. And it's an extremely valuable and important piece. So what this will look like is students meeting with guidance counselors for, in some cases, introductions, in some cases, follow-ups, to discuss what they've been recommended for, to think about what they may like to take in terms of electives, places and opportunities where they feel like, where you feel like a challenge and maybe challenging yourself. And then to talk about kind of the overall picture. So guidance counselors will be able to see your entire course load, what you're thinking about. So that conversation can really be something to look at and examine the balance of your courses, thinking about the extracurriculars, athletics, and other pieces that make you the student you are and give you that full student experience. So guidance counselors want to hear about that and think about your courses in light of that. And also expectations and future planning. So there's some conversations around that, what sets you up for success as you continue your journey through Belmont High School. They'll take place over the course of 3 weeks, the final 3 weeks in March for our current 9 through 11 students, where guidance counselors will have, during a class period, you will end up in breakout rooms and have a chance to meet one-on-one with your counselor. And we're going to meet those counselors in a second, or at least see pictures of them. And then our 8th grade, current rising 9th grade students will have a opportunity to meet with counselors in 2 different sessions during the school day, during the community WIN blocks at Chenery, where counselors will be available to talk with our incoming 9th graders about their recommendations and about elective ideas for when they arrive in the fall. So with that in mind, a quick little snapshot of our guidance counselors and our team. So Mr. Brown is our lead guidance counselor. Guidance counselors are, they support students alphabetically. So each year we, break them up and then you'll have the same counselor for the 4 years that you're here. So Ms. Truslow, Ms. Ross, Ms. King, Mr. Ruane, and Ms. Turner make up our remarkable guidance team. I'd be remiss if I didn't include Ms. Skepa, who is our registrar and the secretary, administrative assistant for the guidance staff. She's someone that can help facilitate conversations around transcripts and things like that as well. So we have a tremendous team. We're very fortunate, and I know they're really excited to meet with each of you. So I am going to pass it back to Ms. Ruane.
Great. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. So the last thing that we expect may inform your decision, students, as you go to select your courses are conversations with family and friends. And even as adults, when we go into making important decisions, it's totally natural to run it by family members, to run it by friends. I think in speaking with your family, a major consideration there should be a school-life balance, really making sure that your course selections paired with your extracurricular activities, your family commitments, your friend commitments, provide for a balance. We want students and families to prioritize student mental health and well-being when thinking about courses to take in the following year. And just a word of caution, students, when speaking with friends about courses, there are just a couple of things to keep in mind, particularly this year. So one thing I might keep in mind is when did this friend take the class that they're recommending? Because if they took the class prior to the pandemic, it might look a little bit different than it was this year. And so if they took the class this year, then maybe that's not a true reflection of what it'll be like next year when we're all back together in school. I would also think about whether or not your learning profiles are similar. And that might be hard for you to know. But when friends make recommendations about courses, they may have different strengths and challenges as students. And then the last word of caution is just to make sure that when friends are recommending a class, it isn't tied to a teacher, like, oh, you got to take this class with this teacher, because there's no guarantee that teachers will teach the same courses year to year. So we would hate for you to make a selection based on a specific teacher only to find out the teacher's not teaching that class in the following year. So just some things to keep in mind when chatting with friends. And of course, chatting with your friends and classmates is totally normal. Just use it as a data point, not the data point.
All right, so those are that's the overview of those 4 parts. And again, just picking up on that last point that Ms. Ruane made, no kind of one of these pieces is the standalone part of the process. They really all work together and inform each other. So we're going to do kind of a quick hits of this new course website that we've put together. We'll give, again, just kind of a general overview. I'm going to show you where it is on the Belmont High School website, so everyone can spend some time looking through on their own. And then we will open it up to Q&A. So Mr. Bryan, if you just go to the next slide first, and then we'll screen share to the website. So this is the website we're about to show you. This is where it's linked on the Belmont High School website. So if you go to the guidance department section, that's where our course selection information currently lives on the website. And it's what's highlighted there in that red box, course selection process for 2021-2022 school year. And you click that link, it's going to bring you to this course website. So that's where it lives on Belmont High School. And then Mr. O'Brien, if you want to bring us there, we can do a quick overview. All right, so this is the homepage you'll see when you get on the website. And you'll see the information that we shared tonight, kind of much more condensed, but the components of the process, as well as those major dates that we talked about, exist on this homepage. You'll also see up top on the blue bar, there's a section for courses by grade level. There's a section for courses by department. There's a section for graduation requirements, and then there's a section that is resources for students and families. So you can click through all of those and find that information. Where we want to show you tonight is this courses by grade level. I think that's where you're going to find a lot of the information about specific courses. So if you go into courses by grade level, and then you find the grade level that you're looking for courses for. So if you're a current 8th grader, you're going to be looking at 9th grade courses. Current 9th grader, you're going to look at 10th grade courses. You guys can do the math there and figure that out. And then you'll see each department. So if you're a current 8th grader, you're looking at 9th grade courses, and you want to see what English courses are going to be like next year, what ones are available to you. You drop down the English tab. And then if you click on those links, it's going to bring you to a template. And those templates give this kind of overview of the class. It's a little more detailed than what our program of studies booklet provides. And it breaks it down just a little bit more in terms of what type of how many hours of homework should I be thinking about? What about assessments? How much project work is there? What's going on with the reading amounts and things like that. So each course has a template built. And so you'll be able to toggle through and compare and figure out which courses feel like the best fit for you. There's another example. Thanks, Mr. O'Brien. And then just as an example, Mr. O'Brien, could you go to something in 11th grade? Maybe let's do 11th grade science. And what you'll see in some of these sections is that there's options that will meet a requirement. So you'll see courses listed here: biology, biology honors, AP biology. If you took those courses, that would meet your science requirement. And then you'll also see electives. So that exists in some areas as well, where you will see some courses that exist as elective credit, but you still need to make sure you're taking a course that meets the requirement for that department as well. So lots of information. You can spend time kind of clicking through and looking to see the information that is relevant to you. Courses by department, you'll see the overview of the department. You'll see how courses build on top of each other. So this kind of sequence you'll see in each department. And then the resources for students and families tab has some really great resources. So again, the list of guidance counselors in class of 2025, we're gonna need to update that for you as well. And then below, you'll see some forms that you might need, and you will see some documents that are timelines and things like that on the resources for students and families. So that's the general overview of the website. Again, please click through, look and see all that information that you need to. And at this point, we are going to turn it over to the Q&A. So we're gonna open the chat for that.
Before we jump into the Q&A, I just wanted to highlight something that Ms. Nguyen was just talking about in the resources section, which is that she has created for every grade a calendar overview of the process with exactly what you need to do when. Those are invaluable resources. I think, if it were my child or if I were a student, I would print those right off and put them on the refrigerator or wherever it's most accessible, because that will walk you through the process. So thank you, Ms. Nguyen, for your work on that. And now let's take some questions.
So I'm looking at a question about this year, the challenge of, do the grades that you receive in a class reflect how ready you are for the next level? And I think we all recognize that this year is different and that grades are different this year. And that's where I believe it's important that we're really doing what Ms. Ruane said in her section of the talk about thinking about triangulating different pieces of information from your teacher, what you know about yourself as a learner, what you know about yourself in terms of how different it's been for you as a learner during this pandemic, and what you think it might be like for you getting back to a more normal school next year, talking to your parents, talking to your guidance counselor. So there are differences this year. There's differences in what grades mean, and there's differences in what the work looks like. And we're committed as a school and as a faculty to meeting students where they are next year. We know these decisions are going to be challenging for everyone about what courses to take. And so, we will offer as much support as you need in making those decisions this year as a student and as a family. And, the guidance counselors are going to play a critical role in this process. So all students will be meeting with guidance counselors. And there's a question about, can parents meet guidance counselors? And, yes, please reach out to your child's guidance counselor where you have questions.
If I can address, there's a couple questions in the chat asking for where to find the website again. It's on the Program of Studies section of the guidance department. We will include the link to this website in the Friday newsletter that Mr. Taylor sends out tomorrow. And we can also include those forms that Mr. Ruane suggested are printed out. We can do a separate link to those as well. So we'll share all of this information. This recording is also going to go on the website too, so you'll be able to come back to this recording as well.
So this is a pretty fun one to answer. So I'm going to go with it about insights into the new school. The school is ahead of schedule right now. It's looking really great. It's an amazing space for students. It's open. It's very light. There are extremely modern, up-to-date facilities in this building that will support learning, 21st and maybe 22nd century learning in this new building and in these new spaces. We are planning to open school next year in the new building, and welcome students into our brand new facility, our brand new building in September. So it's very exciting. We've had the chance as the administrative team to walk around the building and to see it, and it's breathtaking. It's beautiful. The facilities are out of this world. I feel really, really privileged to be able to lead a school that's walking into this space, and I really, truly believe it's going to further strengthen our culture, our student-centered culture at Belmont High School. So really, really exciting to look forward to moving into that building. It's not only good for learning, it's good for safety. It has excellent ventilation, and is a really a safe, an open, and a really inspiring place to be in.
I'm going to pick an easy question to answer. There's a question about explaining the credit components associated to each course. So a full year course, so our English courses and the majority of our courses are 5 credit courses. And so we consider 32 credits to be a full course load. So that is 6 full-time classes, and your PE credits, which are in your 9th grade and 10th grade year, is a 2-credit course. That is a requirement, wellness for 9th grade and positive decision-making for 10th grade. And then in 11th and 12th grade year, you can choose from a variety of 1-credit PE courses. So 32 credits makes up a full course load, 6.5 classes over the course of the school year. We do have semester long courses. We have them as electives in our fine and performing arts and also in some math courses as you progress. So those are 2.5 credits and they run for a semester. So if you are electing to take a 2.5 credit class, you would select 2 electives to make up that 5 credit and fill your course load.
If I can build on that, there's a couple questions in the chat about how students actually submit their course requests once they've decided. So for current 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, that'll be on portals, and you will get information both from us in administration as well as your guidance counselors on how to fill out that form. When you meet with your guidance counselors, they will have you sign off on that form and choose your courses. So we'll make sure that everyone has access to that and you have that available to you. For our current 8th graders, our rising 9th graders, when you get the email with your teacher recommendations, it will be that email will include a form where you will submit your course requests. So those forms are not out yet. Right now, we're just spending time, and we ask students and families to spend time learning about courses, hearing from teachers about recommendations, and having those conversations. And those forms will come out towards the end of March and the beginning of April.
There's some questions in the chat that I'll try and summarize here around, what are the requirements for taking an AP or an honors class, so there are not requirements for taking these classes. You, as a student and as a family, ultimately make the decision what classes you take, and when in doubt, the teacher recommendation is there to guide you. And we would expect that you take that recommendation that very thoughtful recommendation from your teacher seriously and think about it. And so in the past, we had an override system where if you disagreed with that recommendation, you could go and appeal that decision on the recommendation, and that went to the curriculum director for the subject. We've taken that step out of the process. We're trusting students and families to make these decisions, and all of the support that you need to make the decision is there from your teacher, your guidance counselor, and ultimately, as a student and as a family, if you disagree with that, then you make your own decision. What we're not allowing is to skip classes, skip courses. So you can't jump, for example, from Spanish 2 to Spanish 4. There's also a couple of follow-up questions on the high school, one about security. The new high school is very secure. And one about parking. We don't know exactly what the parking situation will look like.
There are a lot of questions, Isaac, about whether or not course selections are guaranteed.
So we guarantee that students will be able to take their core classes. Electives, we can't guarantee that every student will receive all of their electives. We do our very best to accommodate what students want, and where we can't, we communicate with families.
And just to touch on that, so when you're a student or when you meet with your guidance counselor, oftentimes, or they will ask for a first and a second choice, and in many cases a third choice elective, so that as we run into, or if we run into conflicts in your schedule where they don't fit, then the other elective we can go to, and again, that's communicated to you. There was a question about ninth graders being able to take APs. We do not have any AP classes that are offered for ninth grade students. The first APs begin, we have a couple that are 10th grade options, and then the majority are in 11th and 12th grade.
There's a couple of questions in the chat about criteria to decide about a CP level versus an honors level versus an AP level. We're hopeful that those templates can be a good starting point for that. Teachers who teach a course really meant to put that information together and think about what does it look like to take this course at the CP level, this course then at the honors level, and this course at an AP level. So the templates are a good place to start. Also, we'd encourage you to reach out to the teachers in those departments and have a conversation with your teacher about, generally what habits or behaviors do they see that are help students be successful in a CP class, in an honors class, and in an AP class. So there's not kind of a set rule for that school-wide. We really encourage those to be conversations that students, teachers, and families have.
There's questions in the chat about courses next year, and will they look like courses now or courses at the pre-COVID level? So our goal is to get much more back to normal next year with teaching and learning. And, we recognize that this year has been a challenging year for everyone. And so, our teachers are going to meet students where they are. They know that the amount of material that typically was covered in a year was not this past year. So much more like in previous years, and with built-in supports to account for the year that we're going through right now.
I'm seeing a question about how and when current eighth graders will receive their recommendations. So teacher recommendations from your eighth grade teachers are due at the end of this month, and you will receive an email notification that includes a list of what those recommendations are, as well as the next steps and processes that you need to follow to submit your course requests. And then there's time built in for you to do that, for you to have the additional conversations with your teachers, for you to have the opportunity to meet with the guidance counselors in early April, and then ultimately submit right around the second week of April before we take your requests, and as far as deadline goes.
Dan, can you touch on, there's some questions in the chat about electives and how many electives you can take in the different grades, and what's the requirement for the number of classes you have to take?
Sure. So again, a full course load is 6.5 classes. And so in your ninth grade year, it is it generally works out to your 5 core classes, an elective, and your PE. And with there are some adjustments where if you're taking a semester long elective, you may take 2 different, for example, our animation is a half year, and some of our acting 1 or digital art are half year. So you may get 2 electives built in that equate to 1 full year of an elective. And then as you move through, by the time you get to your junior year and senior year, as you have completed more of your graduation requirements, there's more flexibility in your schedule to add in additional electives, provided, again, that you maintain those 32 credits, which is, again, some combination of 5 credit or 2.5 credit courses that equal to 30, and then the 2 required PE credits. There's a question that says, do the encore classes like music or art count towards GPA? Yes, our classes count towards GPA. There was another question about, is GPA weighted based on your taking a CP, honors, or AP? No, that is not the case.
Dan, while you're talking about classes, here's one to add that's coming up a lot in the chat. The math requirement for ninth grade, what does that look like?
So we'll take into account the recommendations that come from the current 8th grade teachers, and then students, the majority of our students take either geometry or algebra 1. And then we do recognize that there are some instances, I believe there's 9 students or so at the middle school that are currently in geometry. So they would follow the next progression in the math, and that would be looked at on an individual basis with the teacher recommendations, as well as the curriculum director for mathematics, to determine what the next course in their progression would be. And as they get, I guess, along those lines, there's a couple questions about math and jumping or moving up in tracks. We then, as you mentioned earlier, we generally don't skip. You can't go from level 2 of a foreign language to level 4 or jump right into AP. But because the schedule opens up as you get to 11th and 12th grade, there is opportunities for students to take multiple math courses. And so they can have that exposure to additional math courses.
I'm seeing questions in here about AP subjects. One person has written, can AP teachers really meet students where they are with AP? The answer is yes. I wouldn't, I wouldn't not take an AP course if you want to, because you're worried about teachers not being able to meet you where you are. And the reality is that AP courses have a set curriculum set by the College Board. And that curriculum is what ends up on the test at the end of the year if you choose to take that AP test, for college credit. So there is a curriculum to get through. APs are challenging courses, and we have really excellent, experienced teachers teaching AP courses, and they will be able to support students with those courses. So everyone's in the same boat here across the country. It's been a very disrupted year, and I have real confidence in our students and our teachers to make this work next year in AP courses. I'm seeing a question here about, is there a video game club? Miss Wynn oversees all of our clubs, so this is a little bit of a test. Can you remember, based on all the hundreds of clubs that we have at BHS, do we have a video game club?
So I don't believe there's one called Video Game Club. There may be a club that goes by a different name that I'm not recognizing as video games. But we are relaunching our activities fair. Here's a plug for March 17th. More information is going to come out with a brand new club list and club blurbs next week. So stay tuned for that. And our rising 9th graders, our current 8th graders, you all will get lots of information about club opportunities over the summer and at the beginning of next year for things that you can look forward to up at the high school outside of your academic classes.
A question for the rising juniors around our current lifetime fitness class as opposed to the PE electives. We're operating under the assumption we're going to be running our PE electives next year. So you'll be able to choose from I think there's 6 different quarter-long electives, and you would choose 2. Language as an elective in junior year, so it would take a spot in your schedule and would technically be an elective because you do only have 2 years of a requirement for a language. So if you're going to continue for 3 or 4 years, that would take 1 spot in your schedule. So that is something to think about. That's a good question. There's a question about, are all AP classes offered every year for the appropriate grade levels? Generally, yes. We do have a couple of courses that operate based on interest and the size of the course. So depending on the number of course requests, we'd make the determination whether to run it in a given year or on an alternating year.
Sarah, there's a question about, could you review one more time how 8th graders will meet with guidance counselors?
Yep. So the guidance counselors are going to come to 8th graders and do a question and answer and assemblies during WIN blocks on April. It's a Tuesday and a Thursday in that first week of April. I think it's the 6th and the 8th, maybe. It's on those timelines. We'll get you those dates exactly. So a few guidance counselor representatives each day will come down and answer questions for the 8th grade students during WIN block. And current 8th graders, you will see the admin team next week during your WIN block to come down and answer some more questions specifically for you all as well.
Okay, I had a question ready to answer, but I forgot it. So let's just see if I can find it again. There's a few questions in here about, will you be allowed to change courses throughout the year? We at Belmont High School, we traditionally do not have an add drop period. We're looking at that to see if we can make that work this year, and we'll send out more information once we've figured that out. And where we have a situation where a student is really struggling in a class, we will do everything that we can to move that class. I think the caveat to that is that it doesn't always translate into you being able to keep all of your other classes, and there might be shifts in teachers or shifts in classes. So we really encourage you not to shift classes and to think carefully about what class you're taking. And if you're in a situation that is a tough situation, reach out to your guidance counselor and they'll be there to support you.
I'm seeing a couple other comments around PE requirements. So there was a question about AAU sports fulfilling the PE requirement for the seniors. So the answer to that is if it was a sport that was not offered at the high school, then you would fill out a request for what we call a full year contract, and there's documentation. Your counselors have that; it's on the website. And then there was a question around JV and varsity sports counting towards the PE requirement. For seniors who play a varsity sport or who play a sport during a season, that would fulfill your PE requirement. And marching band is also included in that for seniors as a PE requirement. So if you remember, a marching band as a senior, that would count as 1 credit of your PE requirement.
There's a lot of questions coming up about meeting students where they are. I'm just going to read this one. What does it mean you will meet our kids where they are? My 8th grader has been remote all year with classes ending at noon. How can I comfortably sign him up for honors when this year has been so weak? Why would I sign him up for a class that he will fail? And why would I underestimate him to do CP? And the counselors don't necessarily know that much about him as a person. So, I mean, this is tough this year. We have had a very, very different year, and we recognize that. We recognize it's different for different students, and we're going back into school next year. And so, what meeting people where they are means is that you assess what people know, what students know, how they're working, how they're coping with school, how they're settling into classes. And this is where our teachers are really strong. We don't have teachers who go into classrooms and stand at the front of the class and deliver notes and lectures. We have teachers who are very good at using formative assessments to figure out what students know, where they are, how comfortable they are. And that's the job of teaching. And that's the difference between teaching and just handing a student a textbook and having them read it. And so we know this is going to be a challenging job, and this year's been challenging. It's been challenging for everyone. It's been challenging for students, and certainly challenging for teachers as well to figure out how to do this. And all we can do is take what we know. And I really believe that families know a lot about as parents, a lot about your children, and students, a lot about yourselves by this time in your life. And you have teachers with a lot of experience who, yes, we're in a difficult year, but who are using their judgment and using their knowledge of the school system and of Belmont school system to try and figure out how to give you the best advice on what to do next year. So I can see that it's a scary time. It's been so different this year. We're going back into a more normal year next year. And ultimately, we want every student to be in a class that's best suited for that individual. And so, you may know exactly what you want to do as a student or as a family, and you may need more support. And I would really encourage you, if you're having difficulty making this decision, to reach out and make an appointment with a guidance counselor or a teacher and have that conversation. And if the teacher doesn't, or the guidance counselor doesn't know your child yet, or know you yet, take the opportunity to tell, to build that relationship and build that rapport. And our guidance counselors are experienced people. They know how school works. They love students. They love young people. They love working with high school students. And they're going to do the best they can to figure you out as a person and help you make the best decision for yourself. Question about students enrolling in classes outside of the school, like a Harvard Extension course. So we do allow this for our upperclassmen. Our seniors can do that. It's called independent study. that's a good conversation to have with the guidance counselor if you're thinking about doing that. Dan or Ali or Sarah, are we missing any questions in the Q&A that we haven't answered?
Trying to stay on top of them. There is a class, there is a question about the 6.5 classes versus can you take a 7th? For our seniors, we allow, if their schedule, if it fits in their schedule, a 7th class. Generally, what that looks like is they have some sort of outside contract for their PE where they're playing a sport, so they don't have the PE courses on their schedule that meet during the school day, and they can fit a 7th course in.
There's a question about community service. So there is a community service graduation requirement. Those hours have been amended this year by the school committee. So generally it's 40 hours for graduation for every student. They have been amended. So for current seniors, you do not need to meet that requirement. The graduation requirements are now listed with the hours that are needed. So there's lots of different options for community service that students can partake in. And then they submit a form and that counts as their kind of official community service record. And that is a graduation requirement. So those need to be done by the time a student graduates. That is community service.
There is a question about H1 and H2 in math. So H1 and H2, I'm thinking about pre-calc as an example. We offer a pre-calculus H1 and a pre-calculus H2. Those are honors level classes, and there's some slight difference between them, with H2 being a little bit more accelerated than H1, I believe. I have to double check myself on that. But one is slightly more accelerated in terms of the concepts, and the idea is that sequentially, the one of them will allow track into some higher level calculus as opposed to the other. If you're in pre-calc, I would recommend spending some time with the course templates on the website for in looking at the difference of the expectations between H1 and H2 as it relates to the level of independence and kind of some of the work and what the assessments look like and things like that. And there's just a couple of math classes that look that way.
Question about graduation requirements. You can find the graduation requirements on the course selection website. They're right there. A question about when will students be able to see the new school and get in there, and will there be tours? The construction is going to go right up until the beginning of this school year over the summer. So unfortunately, the first time that students will be able to see the new building is on the first day of school in September. We'll start to send pictures out though, especially once rooms are finished and things like that. Question about remote still being an option next year. At this point, we do not know if that will be an option. We're waiting on guidance from the state.
The question about taking the AP test if you haven't taken the course at the school, I think it depends on if it's something that hasn't been offered. If it's a course that we don't currently offer, I would recommend reaching out to Ms. King for some more. She's our guidance counselor who handles the AP exams, and she can provide some information about that.
question about not passing MCAS. That tends not to be an issue, but if you don't pass MCAS, then you can take that the next year until you pass. And if in the very unusual situation that you didn't pass MCAS by the time of graduation, you would be given a certificate of completion of of attendance for high school, and then you could work on passing MCAS after graduation. But we don't anticipate that being a big issue. And you know, if and where it is, then we'll work with families on that one.
Mr. Taylor, we're coming up on 8 o'clock, and I just came across a question that I think might be a good place for us to wrap, because it may take a little bit to answer, and then I think we can we'll keep all these questions handy and try to answer more of them in the coming days. I know that Ms. Koza and Ms. Cohen are going to send some communication to the 8th grade families around the timelines and some additional information and resources with links. So those of you who are looking for some of that, expect to see some communication from them. And I know that we'll have additional stuff coming out in our Friday newsletters to families. The question that I saw was 2020-21 school year has not provided certain required sections of a subject or gaps. How are you planning on filling those gaps for the September start?
So thank you for that question, Dan, and thank you again, everyone, for being here. So we'll finish with this question tonight, and you know, this question does go to the heart of what it means to teach students. When I talk about meeting students where they are, that's what I mean. We know this has been a disrupted year. Our teachers communicate with each other. We communicate with each other between grades, and teachers will have a good idea going into September about how the curriculum in the grade below them differed from previous years. Teachers have been living and experiencing this, and they know what the implications are for teaching and learning this year and how that's impacted students. And you know, our teachers aren't just going to go into the classrooms in September and start plowing on as though nothing's happened. We know that we need to do things differently next year. We know that students want and need to be challenged, and challenged appropriately. And you know, we're not going to have students back in school next year and just expect them to go to move ahead with their education as though nothing's happened. So we're aware of this. We know this year has caused challenges in terms of teaching and learning, and we're confident that next year we'll be able to build on students' experiences this year and give students a really great year, and not just a great year in terms of learning, but a great year in terms of being with each other, being in school, being in a social environment, and being able to be a high school student again. So thank you all so much for being here. Look for the follow-up to the questions that we couldn't get to tonight, and really hopeful and looking forward to brighter days ahead and a brighter year next year. Thank you all. Bye for now.